Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. We back. Season 3, episode 31. The true Mike is here today, and I just love it every time he's able to juggle his work schedule to be part of what we're doing. And if you're new to the show, again, it's called Life's Essential Ingredients, but those ingredients are part of a nonprofit that's based in Vacaville, California, and it's called C4 Leaders, like the explosive and powerful leaders. And we're the only nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. Part of the nonprofit, we write children's books. We have 2 of them that are out. It's a series, and so we're writing 3 more. Obviously, host this podcast. And then we do these team building leadership development where we use the most amazing Pasho handmade, hand-tossed sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. So if you would love to support us, check out pizzadays.org. So again, we are coming from Franklin, Wisconsin, and it is beautiful country out there, right next to Lake Michigan. I haven't been through Franklin, I don't think, but been through Wisconsin a little bit. And we have Michelle DeKeyser, and we are in for a big treat. And first of all, the best place to find her is through her website, and it's connectingmamas.com. And I love that name. You just got to smile when you hear that. Again, listeners, connectingmamas.com. And I really encourage everybody to go to the site, because one of the things that I enjoyed most in preparing for this episode was reading your blogs. And they're just heartfelt messages. And I'm just going to get this out. You know, my wife and I, my youngest daughter, Aaliyah, who's home from Spain, just went on a walk right before we're recording this. And we were just talking about, and it was a hard conversation, to be honest, but we were talking about the challenges of being a mom and all the different balls that you're juggling, probably 12 of them all at the same time. Some of those balls are made of plastic. Some of them made of styrofoam. Some of them made of glass. And it's just incredible what the people who take care of their families in that role, and I don't want to sound sexist because you don't need to be female or male, you know, whoever it is that's in that mama role will say, yeah, we just have so much respect and honor for all that you do to be the foundation, or in my case, to be the dough that allows everybody to add their ingredients to their family's recipe. And so this is going to be an incredible episode. Again, listeners, connectingmamas.com. So about our guest, Michelle is a wife and a mom of 3 kids who participated in various mom groups, ran a few, even joined some book clubs, but envisioned something different as she found herself looking around, still wondering, what did she like to do that didn't involve the kids' activities? As she worked to discover her own passion, she realized that there was no one-size-fits-all program. But the true key to figuring out your passion and making your goals happen is finding connection in a supportive environment. Love that. Michelle envisions connecting mamas by building a support system to remove the loneliness and isolation that can be felt in motherhood. She holds an MA in education, spent 8 years in the classroom, and traveled around the world for 13 months before starting her own family and becoming a stay-at-home mom. Michelle, thanks for dedicating your life to help mothers and families all over the world. And thanks for being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. Welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm glad both of you are here as well, Mike. It's great to have both of you here today.
Yeah. Pasho fired up. Just say a little something from the heart, Pasho. Let's go, baby.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know a lot of mothers. I am not a mother, but my wife is a mother of 4. So yeah, I can remember going back, with our first kid. Your life changes, obviously, more so for the mother, I think. So I can't wait to hear ways to help support mothers all around the world. This is great.
All right. All
Well,
right.
Jeff, I do have to say, I love the analogy of the balls because I've been working with that idea as well. And also just for the moms out there thinking that we do have those different balls, but they also do change. And I think that's what we forget is sometimes a glass ball might be our relationship with our husband, but then it becomes rubber later because it's stronger. And then we have to work on the whatever the next glass ball is, but they will revolve. And it's sometimes just identifying what are the ones that need the attention right now as we're juggling all those.
I'm just going to stop right now. This is where it's going to be a fun episode because I don't even think we're going to get to, all the other questions, but it's so important, because for me right now, my whole life is around pizza, and I'm
Pizza's yummy.
trying to make sense of life. And just in hearing you talk about the different balls and how those balls change, it just takes me around this circle, which represents the pizza, but also in the deeper way represents our life span, the time that we have to grace this earth, and how we all go through different stages depending on where we are, even with our age, what's going on with our children, our career, and knowing that it's okay. Sometimes you're going to be at a stage that that's not working out exactly like we would like, and you're having to juggle all these glass balls and where you feel like you're walking on eggshells and things. But that's why I'm so excited, because the main thing that I think you're going to bring for the listeners that you do each and every day is connection in a supportive environment. And that's where we speak the same language, because our nonprofit, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved, and then to be able to deal with whatever ball they're juggling, whatever
Right.
stage of life they're in, to be able to say, hey, you know what? We can get through this together. We rise together. And so let's go. Let's go. So
Let's go.
we start with this thought of the day, and it's from Confucius. That ought to just tell you enough. It is deep. To put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. To put the nation in order, we must first put the family in order. To put the family in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. We must first set our hearts right. Why would I pick that one for you?
Wow. First of all, though, before I do have to admit, at my time, I'm in Central right now, and it's 11:11, and I always pause at 11:11 just to say what I'm grateful for. So I'm grateful for you guys and being on there and sharing this message together. And so I encourage everyone out there to pick. I love the numbers 111 all together, and so that's one of the reasons why I do it. So my alarm just went off, and a reminder. And so just doing those reminders or thoughts throughout the day, or even red lights. Instead of being upset about a red light, think of it as a chance to think of something you're grateful for. So side note, but getting back to your quote, it actually, what spun in my head as you said that right now was in 2009. It was a Dalai Lama that said the Western woman is going to save the world. And what that leads me to, from what you're saying with Confucius, is bringing that concept together. Is how do we do that? And one of the people that's inspired me is Dr. Bolian, who wrote The Million Circles. And how we do that is in the circle format of how we express ourselves. And we don't necessarily have that masculine leadership where we have one person in front of the room. We have this circular type of communication where we acknowledge each other and share ideas. And I think bringing that together as we start as women, as people, to identify where we're at, as you go back to the Confucius quote to the beginning, it starts with us, but as we start to identify who we are, that we can come into that circle presence as we commute with other people and acknowledge each other and who they are. And then that kind of merges them together. And so one of the ways I run my program is through the circle, is how we come together when we speak. We're acknowledging and listening, and not necessarily giving advice or things right away. That comes later, but it's in that listening to each other and acknowledging where everyone is at. And I think that's so important. But again, it's identifying back to self, and you can't start until you start to, but the community helps you come up with that process of figuring it out.
I love it. And yeah, we just speak very similar language. In C4 Leaders, we do team building and leadership development, and we always start out with the circle, and then for me, it's, not about the pizza, but I just envision, the pizza. But in creating a circle, where everybody can be seen and there's no hierarchy because it's a circle. And there's so many parts of our society that we push to the margins and don't allow to enter that space. Just by creating that space for people to come as they are allows all of us to then be transformed by what's inside of each of us,
Yes.
and we never will find out what that truly is until we create that culture that builds a connection, that creates trust, and then vulnerability that leads to empowerment. And
Exactly. And as you're saying, we've been in like this kind of stuck in our own little self. So it's hard to just say, okay, well, I'm going to trust or be vulnerable to someone. So it's creating the atmosphere where we can start coming little by little back out of our shells. Because I mean, even before COVID, I mean, we're still in our houses, we're still in our cars, where we're in our little spaces, especially as moms. Once you start getting on like the sport route, you're always in the car by yourself with the kids. And like, so you're not getting that community, that idea of like when you think about back in the days when people would gather fruit together, they'd be doing it together, they'd be washing their clothes by the river together and having these conversations as they're doing their activities. Now we're doing it all by ourselves, and we've lost that ability to feel connected, and yet we crave it so much. But at the same time we crave it, but how do you differentiate the fact that you haven't had it for so long that you can just jump into it? Because then that's when all the trauma and all the past of maybe someone in the past had a girl had done something to you, and it makes it hard to make those connections. So we need to do it slowly, to really be able to be vulnerable and learn when to, because we shouldn't be vulnerable with everybody.
yeah, for
We need
sure.
to figure out that dance, and it's a learning process.
Mm,
And we need that space to be able to do it safely, where we feel safe enough to become ourselves.
mm. I love it. And I'm going to share one last thing, and then we're going to get going. We're in the show, but we're going to really get going. This is where I knew it was going to be an interesting episode, because one thought was going to lead to another, in creating this space into where we crave it, and I just think we have it inside us all, and we all do crave it, just like one of C4 leaders, sourdough, homemade, hand tossed pizzas, right, my pasho? But I get worried sometimes, and I believe in people that we're using other material things or other just things, I'll say, to meet the need of that craving, and even of having those thoughts, to give ourselves time to think the unthought thoughts, and so that's why I'm so passionate about what we do. Honored to be part of this podcast where we meet people all over the world who are doing work like you're doing, to create that space to allow people to get away from the things that stimulate them, perhaps in not the best way, to get to the core, to the root of who we are, and how we've evolved. When you talk about people washing their clothes down at the water, well, that's how we've evolved. Talked about people gathering around fire, and being part of their tribe. Well, that's how we've evolved, and then we're getting further and further away from even our neighbors who are right next door and across the street, to where we know who each other, are, and so, yeah, we got work to do, but the more work that we do, the more confident I get in that we're going the right way. And I'm going to choose to continue to invest my energy and positivity in that space. But let's get into you. So this is a broad question, and you can take it any which way you would like. But what was life like growing up?
Life was like growing up. Well, actually, ironically, we were talking before the podcast started. So I grew up in Los Angeles. So I actually went to an all Catholic elementary and high school. So I went to a very small school, and being a white woman, I was actually in the minority, because the majority was very Hispanic, being in LA and a Catholic. So so I've had that kind of experience of just being on the other side, of just being a little bit different, and just that kind of. So I've always struggled with belonging, like feeling like part of the group. Like I just kind of felt like the outsider a lot of the ways, and it wasn't necessarily my culture, because there were a few other girls as well that were white that were included, but just it made my personality, my nature, whatever it was, I struggled with trying to belong. I also struggled dynamically in my family, just in terms of my mom is manic depressive, and so just always taking care of her, and just not feeling like I had that outsourced to let my feelings out. I was always taking care of everyone else. And so those two combinations is kind of what led me to what I want to do, because I don't want others to feel like they don't have that sense of belonging. And it is a struggle to feel that. And I've always been that kind of person who wants to include everyone. If I do run something, or if I'm hosting something, or I'm holding the neighborhood party, I want to make sure that I'm including anyone that would want to partake, or, not trying to exclude anyone. That's just the way I always felt. Because even lately in the neighborhood, like there'd be one of my signature stories is just like, I was 9 months pregnant with my third child. And I was standing outside the window, and I knew all the moms were having a neighborhood party across the street, but I wasn't invited. And that feeling of isolation. And I know a lot of moms go through that, and just having those experiences, though, has really opened my eyes to, I was always feeling sorry for myself. I'm like, what can I do differently instead? And that's what made me want to reach out. I was like, I want to include anyone that wants to be part of this. People, moms out there that all of a sudden like, I want more purpose. I want more fulfillment. That's what I want to create, is that community, to all of us to do more and give back more and create more for our kids and inspire them as well.
I love it. I love it. Connectingmamaspasho.com. Listeners, check it out. So the show is called Life's Essential Ingredients. If you were to look at your life in just one day chunks, what are those essential ingredients that kind of get you up, get you going, get you fired up, and that you could share with the listeners?
I think what it really comes down to, and it's actually been just more of a recently that I've had the realization, but I mean, it is really having those present moments in the day. And what can you say that I actually enjoyed about my day? Because we're so stressed about the future and the possibilities, but if we're not enjoying in the moment. And so, for instance, yesterday was first day back to school for the kids. So today is day 2, but really just trying to hone in on my schedule of how I'm going to spend my time in that day. But also, I was always kind of in the morning worried about what the kids are going to do and stuff. Instead, I'm making sure that in those mornings that I spend 10 minutes with each kid individually doing something. So my son and I have actually, over the course of the summer, started doing Qigong together, which I've really enjoyed. And he kind of does it. He does it, I think, more because I want to do it, but he's still doing it. So I just try to close my eyes and not focus on his form or anything and just let it be. But like, it's something that we do. In the last 2 mornings, he's been excited and came right down and said, let's do it. I'm like, let's do it. And then with my girls, the youngest just likes to read, and so this morning we got to sit for 10 minutes and read. My middle was just bouncing all over the walls, but we started getting her popcorn stuff ready today, because that was something that she wanted to get in order, because they're going to sell popcorn for the Boy Scouts this weekend. All 3 of mine are in Boy Scouts, that they finally open it up to girls, and so they rather do that and all the adventures of camping. And so when I look at the day and what it's doing, it's really just looking at how am I enjoying it and looking at those moments. And so when was really looking forward to the podcast today and doing the things that's getting my message out there. And then when I get off with you guys, it's going to be working in the other aspects where I have to get my message out and doing the funnels and all that other stuff, but trying to be creative with it and trying to get out the stuff that isn't inspiring your genius. And I think that's what it comes down to, is what do we do that really is inspiring what innately we do well. And so that's what I've been trying to do with my kids as well. As I used to focus so much on my son not having friends per se, instead of the things that he's doing well. And they get enough of that at school. Like, they're not good in reading, so they got to focus on that. Or they're not good in math, they got to focus on that. So he loves cooking. And so we've really picked that up, that even this summer, 2 weeks straight, he did all the meal planning for dinner. All I had to do was take him grocery shopping and be a sous chef sometimes. Sometimes it was a disaster, but for the most part, he cooked these amazing meals at 12 years old, because it was something he enjoyed doing. And he even started a little bit of microgreen business with a couple neighbors, just to like sell microgreens in the summer to see how that went. Lost interest, but we'll see if it picks back up. But I think really what it comes down to in your daily thing is, what can you do to inspire that genius in each of you? Instead of what you think you should do, what does your heart tell you feels good?
Love it. I love it. And speaking of feeling good, I know you said you grew up in LA. Somehow you ended up in Wisconsin. What do you love? And Pastor, you got to say Wisconsin. Uh, uh,
Wisconsin. I'm
uh,
learning.
what do you love about living out there?
Honestly, when I in California and stuff, I felt the traffic and the weather. Obviously, having the sun all the time was nice, but I feel like I've gotten hours back to my life in terms of not always being in the car. Part of that might be staying at home, which might have happened. But even when I was staying at home with my son, when I lived in, I was always driving to Gymboree or something. I felt like I was always in the car, like longer than I would be here. But I love the aspect of just the smallness and feeling like we have bigger space and things that we would not have had in California. Because I mean, our condo is twice the price of our house right now, that we still own, that we're renting out. But it's that feeling of just wherever you're at and making the best of it, though. And so sometimes the winters are harsh and they're long, but it's just like doing the best you can to enjoy. And the kids, my daughter was actually saying how much she loves. We live in a cul-de-sac, so at the snowplow will push all the snow up there so they can make forts when it gets high enough. And so it's just looking for those moments and making the best of wherever you're at.
Love it. And where exactly? I should have looked it up, but in where exactly is Franklin?
Oh, I'm basically part of Milwaukee County, so we're just the suburbs of Milwaukee.
Okay, okay, okay. Now, family meals. One of the cool things about our nonprofit is our first book is We Rise Together, and they're children's books, and we make sourdough pizza. And in order to make sourdough pizza, you have to have a starter. So a big part of that book is feeding the starter. And I
love it.
the starter to what are you doing to nurture your heart and soul. And so quite a few schools use that first book as like a theme for their school. And so I started this Feed the Starter challenge. And I won't get into all the details about the challenge, but your question is coming here in a quick second. One of the things that I think we could do better as a society is just get back to the table. And there's so much research around the importance of family meals and how it creates space. And we've talked about that space a bunch, but it creates space for your children just to know that there's someone there to listen to them when they choose to share what's going on in their life. But it's about creating that space. And so, the Feed the Starter Challenge, the schools that are working with our nonprofit, is just to have 4 meals per week for 4 weeks. And then the families that sign up for that, we come back a month or so later, bring the pizza truck, and we celebrate and party with them conquering the challenge. Because we just don't do a great job in the U.S. And there's all different kind of numbers, but I'll just throw out the ones. But it's like between 30 to 50% of families in the U.S. have at least 5 meals together per week. And then you look at what happens if you have meals more frequently: decrease in childhood obesity, decrease in high risk behavior, increase in pro-social behavior, academic performance jumps up through the roof, and then just a family connection and just the overall well-being. So my question after that long kind of intro into that, but it's important because I know it's got to be something that you really focus on. Just what tips do you have for families who are in your space of juggling all these balls to make sure that we can get people back to the table and creating a space for their kids to be seen, heard, and loved?
Well, I love that, first of all, and I love the idea of a starter. And I actually have to admit that my son, was it last year, made starter from sourdough and create this whole explosion on the countertop that I have no idea how it works. Or he's the chef at 12, not me. But I agree, the table is where it's at. But I want to get out of the mindset that a lot of people think that it has to be dinner time. If breakfast works for you better, make it a breakfast meal. I mean, it's coming. The idea is the connection and the bringing it together and doing things together and sharing that. And one of the things we also do is we've evolved it a little bit, but we used to just always go around like what we're grateful for each other and things like that as part of it. But I got this idea recently. We do one struggle one success, one struggle, one thing that was funny, and then one thing you're grateful for the day. And we kind of share that to the table. And I'll just randomly go, sometimes we just start with talking and stuff, and then I'll say, okay, who's ready to start? And then one of them will just jump in and start going with that list. So we made that kind of a habit. And we don't do it every meal that we do it. But again, it does create that culture, because again, like I said, focusing on my son's strength of cooking, he gets mad when he cooks, like when we don't have those family meals, and you can see that they're all pushing, like, okay, we can make it work tonight, we're all here, we're going to make sure we have a family meal together. And I think when we instill that, and it's just making that habit as often as we can, however we can. And like I said, a lot of times it works, breakfast works better for people if you can make that work. And just it's more that time, and making sure you're putting that time. Maybe it's dessert. Maybe you come together at the end of the night for dessert or something. It's just that time of sharing and coming together. And so figuring what works for your family to make that happen as often as you can.
I love the insight and the ideas, and I love all the work that your son is putting into contributing. And I'm sure it's been fun to see him evolve in that space, and with his self-confidence, which is what's so cool. You know, a lot of times you start gaining self-belief, and that transfers into other parts of your life. And so, yeah, really exciting to hear that.
And I do want to say it transfers to other people as well, because his sister has been inspired to now, she'll make breakfast for her and her sister because she wants to, and feels that confidence in it because she's watched him do it for so long. She's like, I can make waffles from scratch. I can do it. And like just seeing that. And again, it is that modeling. So it's for those you parents out there to be modeling for your kids so that they're seeing that. So she's seeing him doing it. Now she wants to do it as well. And so it transfers both to yourself and others around you.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get into your business, you know, connecting mamas. To let the listeners know about that and the work that you're doing. I know you got a bunch of different things that go on in that space. Yeah, let's just talk about any part of it that you want.
Well, the part that I'm trying to grow the most right now is offering a 12-week course to the moms. And so again, in this course, I run it in a woman's space, a woman's circles format, and it's all through Zoom. And honestly, the reason why I not even working on doing one in Milwaukee or anything is I think we need to do those baby steps back to connection. And so Zoom allows for the small steps. It also allows for us not to use that excuse that I'm too busy. Like I don't have to find childcare. I don't have to get in the car. I don't have to go do those things, but I can still start that process of rediscovering who I am. And so that's what this course offers, is that experience to do that and to start those steps and to come into that community. And again, it's just, for me, Connecting Mamas is all about just building those communities and bringing those moms in. So I'm trying to attract them to me so that I can bring them together and connect them with each other and create that support system that you need. And the great thing about virtual is if you move, you don't lose it. It's something you're already ingrained into it. You can take it anywhere with you. And so it's a starting base to give you that foundation to then create what you might need in person as well. I mean, not saying virtual's all and done, but it's a place to start. And so that's why I'm really putting all my effort into creating a virtual community for the moms, because we can do it more expansive. And my goal is really to create projects and things for moms to be able to do together and really create that desire of purpose and something outside of us that we want to do and be more than moms, but then also be able to include the kids into it. It's all about, like we were talking about, inspiring that genius in each of us. What are we really good and put on this earth to do, and helping each other, as you were saying, rise the tides. And we do that because we're all coming out with our own gifts. And so Connecting Mamas, really offering that course. And then I also, like you were saying, I have the blog. I'm working on the creating the YouTube channel. I'm actually about to take on a new project, which I'm going to say it out loud on the podcast so that I do it. But I really want to dive into doing a whole series on what women's circles are and the importance of it, so people can learn more about the structure and the importance of it, and how that type of connection really changes who you are in the way you present yourself to the world and gives you that confidence to do it. And so all those things are coming through. And again, really it's just about wanting to bring them together and see the beauty that they really are.
I love it. I love it. I want to take one step back, because I imagine, you know, it's such a tricky we'll just stick with our juggling act, managing a family. And again, I want to be crystal clear. Both Mike and I have been blessed to have wives that have done, most of the heavy lifting. And I so appreciate my wife and love her and hope she's felt, that appreciation throughout our 29 years of marriage. But I imagine, for you, part of what you're doing is trying to help people take that first step of being able to take a breath, which you've talked about, slowing down and being present, but then trying to be able to like, all right, how do I take my first step? I just feel like I have so much going on and I'm doing it for everybody else, so I don't have time for me. There's going to be pushback because I'm the one that does everything for everybody else. So now if I'm not doing it for them, well, now they're kind of pissed at me. And it's like, wait a second, I'm just trying to get a little bit of time for myself to figure out who I am because I've lost my identity as a human. And yes, I'm a mom, but there's so much more to me. And so, yeah, how would you encourage the listener who's in that space and feeling that way to be able to just take that first step, towards, kind of reigniting their spirit, so to say,
Well, I think you perfectly set me up for my free gift, actually. But the free gift that I offer also is how to take back your morning in 1 minute. Because again, it's the intention, it's the process of starting it. And so when you look at what are you going to do for yourself for even just 1 minute before you face your day? So before you look at your phone, before you talk to a kid, before you talk to your husband, 1 minute that you're going to do for yourself. So it might be writing down what you're grateful for. It might be just taking some deep breaths. And a lot of moms like, well, I have a screaming baby. I'm like, you have enough time to take 2 deep breaths before you get to the screaming baby. And again, it's just that intention. It's changing that mindset. And it starts just with one decision. And so what are you going to do first thing in the morning to set you up before anyone else? And that's where I would just start, is because it starts with that morning. Everyone says, well, I let the kids wake me up. And one mom even said, the kids sleep next to me. I'm like, okay, well, if your kids sleep next to you, you pretend that you're asleep and you just take some deep breaths, or you meditate in your mind, staying still for 2 to 3 minutes. It's just that starting that perspective change that I do have time for me. And there are ways to do that. And then it's setting in those routines with your kids, so that the biggest thing about the morning is that we have so many decisions to make. And so how do we take those decisions out of the morning? So for instance, one of the biggest fights always was, what are we gonna have for breakfast? Right now we have a breakfast schedule. So and actually this year the girls go to school differently than Liam does. So they have a different schedule than Liam does because they couldn't agree on. I'm like, I don't care if you agree. Each of you just has to have your own schedule of what you want. And so like the girls will have proof phase on Monday. Tuesdays are egg days, but then like it's just set up. And so the more decisions that we can take out of the morning, if your kids struggle picking out their clothes, have the kids pick them out the night before. And so when you can ask yourself, what are some of those decisions that just take them out? What can be prearranged? What can be done? Those are the things that set you up to get your day, that when time you get them on the bus or to school or homeschooling or whatever, you're not like, I'm just so spent, I can't, nothing left. Or at work, you're also like, oh, I'm just so relieved to be here because they're gone. Or rather than showing up and going, I'm ready for the day to start because my morning wasn't so stressful. And so it's just taking those things out. And it's really the intention and the perspective change that really starts it. And it's not necessarily that I need an hour. I need to wake up an hour before the kids. No, we're talking 5-10 minutes just before you address anyone else. You give that to yourself first. Even saying good morning to yourself in the mirror first. Those are all things that are going to start this process.
Love it. Yeah. And the word that I just been writing, and just so you know, I take notes every time. I'm not on my phone here when I don't know if you see my head going down or not, but I'm taking down all kind of notes, and I'm writing, preparation and circled that. And I just know for me personally, when I have a lot going on, the more I can be prepared, the more at peace I am. And then the more I can be present and focused on the here and now. And it's just that preparation, I think, is huge. And then in listening to you, you know, preparing your kids for success and allowing them to take action towards gaining those feelings, gaining that peace. And then it just becomes the culture, becomes the norm in the household is, hey, this is how we roll. You know, we make our own meals. We've got them all planned out, got our clothes ready, and we're ready to go. To just a great way to start the day.
And it's also figuring out what works for you, your family, which is like my kids, like I tried to check off sheets and stuff and just does not work at all in my house. I've tried. None of us are consistent enough to like make it work. What finally did work, and again, that's part of the bonus of the morning freebie, is that I just put out a sheet on the door that just questions of what they need to do to make sure they're like, do they have the lunch packed, and the things that we'd go through the morning. And I did this probably last year and I actually forgot about it, but we didn't use it all summer. My youngest was actually reading it yesterday without me even prompting her. She's like, I forget everything. And I just want to make sure I'm checking everything off. And she was just up going through the whole thing. It just sits on the door and it's just a reminder for them to come check it out. And I don't even prompt them anymore. We've gone through the list so much that I even forgot it was even there. And she was there though, using it because it was part of the routine already. And that's where it comes in is a lot of this sounds like well and great. And but it's very overwhelming if you don't already have it set up. Because I can remember my mornings, we homeschooled for 1 year during COVID, but the mornings I was so hesitant to send my kids back to school because I can remember those mornings where I sat as soon as they left out the door, like, oh, thank God they're out the door. Like I am just spent for the day because it was all the fighting and like, where's my shoes? Where's this? And I've been through all of that too. And it was when you make that decision that's where moms, we do need that coaching or that help, because there are people that have been there and done it before. So it depends on how you want to do it. I mean, there's videos out there, whatever way you want to do it, but it's how do we get that preparation in is getting the ideas from people that have already done it. But sometimes searching for all that is so overwhelming. That's why I'm sitting here recommending some kind of coaching program or something that helps you where you're at, whether it's mine or someone else's. But that's my go-to right now, is what really started me down this path, is once I started getting the help from people who've already been there and being able to ask those questions in the process. Because when you watch all those videos and stuff, my head was just swimming and didn't necessarily lead to action.
I got a question, and for me, this question is probably 25 years too late to help my wife. Sorry, Glory, but for those of us that are mamas, what are some tips that you can give us to help out in all this?
You mean in like morning in general? You left me hanging there, Mike. Give me a little bit more specifics.
Oh, like just to support, just to help out, to be there. If it's make some lists, is it just to listen? Or does it make them feel special? What is it that we can do to lend support in just the everyday aspect?
Well, I think the biggest thing, especially with your kids, is just to take a step back and listen, like as you were saying, because they have these big feelings. And we always, like when they're crying or they're throwing their tantrums, I mean, my 7-year-old can throw a 45-minute tantrum, no problem. So a lot of times I'll have to walk away till she's ready to talk. But when she is talking, I will like purse my lips together so that I'm not trying to fix it or respond to her, that I'm just letting her cycle through it. Because we have that habit of stopping people mid thought. We have that habit of trying to fix it. And sometimes, I mean, and women know this because they can feel it when moms out there, when you're talking to your husband and you're like, you just want to talk, and they're saying they're trying to fix it. Well, as parents, we do that same role. Like we try to do that for our kids and we don't give them the space. And so the biggest thing is to really just start listening, to be able to identify what are their strengths, what are their geniuses, how do I support that as I move forward? Because like I said, I had such a conflicting with my son. We're very similar, and I think that's what it was. And so once I start focusing on the cooking and letting go of some of the other questioning and stuff, the relationship grew. And so it's taking a step back and close your mouth and knowing when you need to take a break. Like I will walk away when they're screaming at me. Like, you just went and hid in your room again. And I go, yep, I sure did. That kept me from screaming back at you till I was ready to take a couple deep breaths and then go back in there. But that's what the biggest thing is, though. But it's really taking that chance to listen. And when they come to you, and say, mom, I got this exciting project, or I really want to show that. If you don't have time, acknowledge them and say, I will get back to you in 10 minutes. I will get back to you in a half an hour. But when we just blow them off, that's where the problems start to see. So it's really just about listening to where they're at and giving them that space. And for instance, if they come off the bus and my daughter sometimes will go hide, I give her that space to hide, give her some time, and then I go right back in. And again, pursing my lips, making sure that I'm just listening. And I will then ask, well, do you want me to contact someone? Do you want me to do anything? Or do you want me to just be quiet? When I feel like there's a need for that. And so I think that's what it really comes down to, is seeing what they need. And doing that for ourselves is acknowledging that if you feel like you're stuck, or you're acknowledging that, that's okay. And the more we acknowledge it and say, well, what can I do about it? We start to be curious and ask the questions. And again, with your kids, asking more questions rather than solutions is a better way to go. If you want to say something, ask another question.
Great.
That answers your question.
Yeah, great tips. Great tips. And I love it. Just lead me to Viktor Frankl, and the stimulus response, and where you have that space in there to choose, and to pause. But
the beauty is in the pause.
Oh yeah.
We are so afraid of the pause, which is why sometimes I'll physically purse my lips together so I don't say anything. Let that 30-second pause happen. They get uncomfortable, they keep talking.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I love to segue into, you use the word curious. And I know, I don't know exactly when it started for you, but you have been on this mindset journey and have really invested in a lot of courses and books to, empower yourself. And then therefore now you're empowering lots of other moms. But what was some big takeaways? And obviously, I know you have your course that you have taken that expertise through all those courses and all the trainings, and now you're sharing it in your course. So obviously, listeners, we want you to check that out. Again, it's connectingmamas.com. But what are some of your takeaways and insight that you could share for someone that's like, man, I would love to take those courses, and I'm one of them, but I'm too cheap, to pay for that. And so I just get the book. Why is it important? And I'm all about taking action, but for some reason that's a blind spot for me, that I won't do that. Convince me and convince some other listener, like, man, you have to invest in yourself.
What you just in the words, you have to invest in yourself, because you have to look at where you're at and where you want to be. And what is going to help you get there? If you are that self-starter that actually does the activities in the book, but let me tell you this, especially as women, we don't really see it until we've said it to another person. And so if you're able to do that in a safe space where everyone is going through that same group, that's what helps you grow, is getting it out. And you're like, and you can read most self-help books, you'll be reading, like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. But the question is, are you doing it? And it's so much easier, even as a coach, sometimes say, oh, you should do this. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm not doing that one. I need to work on that. And so sometimes it's easier to figure that out. And so when you have that accountability, when you have that support, you're more likely to do those actions than you are to do it on your own. Because we always put ourselves down first. We put ourselves last. So if you look at your list of to-do lists, and you had 4 things you do for the kids, and then you're like, I'm going to read that self-help book, that's going to be at the bottom of your list. Let's be honest. And you may or may not get to it. And even if it's at the top of your list, you read that page or that paragraph for the day, did you do anything to implement it? Or did you understand what you should be doing, or how to actually do that to get that across? And a lot of times the answer is no, because when we cycle those thoughts through our heads, we need to get them out either through paper or through speaking to someone else. And so if you're a big journaler, that's a great way to go too, is we need those thoughts out of our heads, because if they keep circling, we're just gonna be like, oh, I should do this, I should do that, I should do that. And it just circles back and forth. But when you get into that community, that environment where other people are, it's the energy. It's being around people that, again, back to Tony Robbins, with the 5 people who you hang out with is who you become. So who are the people that you want to hang out with? Especially moms. One of the things I realized is there was so many negative tables. Like you walk to the table and everyone's complaining about their kids or the husband or whatever. And it's just this complaint fest. And if you don't have a complaint, like I just was mute, I was silent. I didn't share because that wasn't going to lift me up. Like, I don't want to complain more, but then like, say, oh, I do have one complaint. And I would look for them. I would search for them in my head to be able to add them to the table. And I don't know if other moms out there have felt the same way. So what environment do you want to be in? And so for me, that's why I want to create Connecting Mamas, because I want that positive environment where we're not saying that we don't have struggles. We share those struggles, but we're not going to live in them and try to one up each other. That's just part of what we're going through. And we're going to share those, express those so we can work through them, get ideas, and voice them out of us. Because when we say them out loud, a lot of times they just disappear. But when you read the book and you have your thoughts in your head, it doesn't always disappear. And that only happens when you're in a group.
Yeah. Speaking of disappearing, this might come across a little harsh, and I don't mean it to, but say I'm a listener and I love my family, and it could be whoever it is in that role that's having to be the provider of care for the whole family. And I'm just done. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. And again, I love my family, but I'm just doing so much. What is just the one tip? And you probably shared it, but I just want the listeners to hear it again, where I'm at the end of the rope. I'm really starting to question everything in my head and losing who I am. What is the one thing, one action that they could take to help them perhaps, take a respite from what they're feeling, and then hopefully start to change that eventually?
The first thing I just would want to say to that person is that you're not alone. You're not the only one feeling like that. And sometimes the reason why we don't want to take action is we think we're going to be embarrassed, or no one else feels that way, or someone's going to judge us for feeling that way. So first of all, I just want to tell that listener or whoever needs that message that you're not alone and that we're here to support that. So the first step would be just to sit there and acknowledge that, and to acknowledge this is the way I'm feeling right now, and not to judge yourself for it. That's the hardest part, though, is the judgment starts coming in, and the thoughts, the negative Nelly, and everything in your head starts to put on that when you're acknowledging. But when we acknowledge it and we take a step back, then we go, the next thing to do is then almost kind of put your hands in your belly and go into your gut, into your intuition, and listen to yourself. What is yourself telling you your next step is? Because now that you've acknowledged it, you're opening up that curiosity, you're opening up that pathway, because really the answer is within. But as soon as you open that doorway, the next book, the next course, the next thing that you need, when you listen to your gut, because again, we all do have that carrot syndrome, and like, oh, that's going to help, that's going to help. Really weigh it out and say, is this what I need right now? But it's to open that door to that curiosity and to just acknowledge and sit with it for it. And there isn't going to be a quick instant fix. And that's the problem, is everyone wants that quick instant fix. And the reality is that is not going to happen. But if you're open to the teacher will appear in front of you that you need. And to just keep listening to yourself in that process and not everyone around you. That's the biggest key.
Great tip. And it always ties into our thought of the day. We must first set our hearts right, by Confucius. And speaking of getting our hearts right, I think we're at the great spot for the last little question. And it's a quote and then a question. And it's from John Alston. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And I want to fast forward. You're a young woman, and fast forward 60 years, and you're on your deathbed. You're getting ready to take your last breath. You're surrounded, in this time, by great grandkids and all the people that you've served and helped throughout your life. You're getting ready to take your last breath. What is it you want people to leave in their hearts as you take your last breath and go home?
Just that the people I've touched have that sense of belonging. I've just always had that wanting to include everyone, and I did never want to leave anyone out. And so part of my legacy is just making sure that we're connecting with each other and getting back to that sense of how we do this together and how we support each other rather than put each other down. And just because one person's rising, that doesn't mean I can't rise too. In fact, it's going to help me if we connect together. And that's what Connecting Mamas is all about, is bringing us together to rise those tides, because we do it. But we have that ego in us that says, well, I have to do it by myself and I can't do it with other people. And so it's that turning point that we're getting, that I want to leave that legacy, that as we shift that mentality, that we're in this together, not separately. The more we work on ourselves and ourself as we move forward, then we bring that energy to each of the people around us, and we make those people, that proximity, a beautiful place. And doing that for more women would be, and my family, and just that we enjoy our days.
I love it. I love it. What a great way to end the show. Pasho, get us out of here like only you can do it. Pashito, let's go.
Pressure's on. I don't know, but Michelle, thank you
put
so
it on
much.
me, so
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And thank you for connecting all these wonderful mamas in a group. That's a great thing. And thank you for including us. I know you like to include people. Thank you for including us today in all this. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Michelle, any closing comments from you?
yeah, well, this is how I love to end it, is just to get that idea of connection out there more. And the one tip I want to leave all listeners with is, in your minds, when you like see something that you want to express with your heart, to actually do it. So a lot of times I put in the words of compliments. So like for me, it'd be like, if I see a woman that has a really nice dress on or something, and just, it makes me smile. I want to reach out there and tell them. And I've been doing it a lot more. And sometimes I'll be all of a sudden like, oh, I get embarrassed. I'm like, nope, I got to take my own advice. And then it brings just such a big smile to our face. It might just not be any more of that. But the more we're just genuine with our hearts, and the more we're just giving out that positive energy, the more we're just going to make this world a better place. It's going to have that ripple effect. So just keep connecting with each other.
I love it. Again, connectingmamas.com. Michelle DeKeyser, coming from Franklin, Wisconsin. We thank you for being our guest. And Pashito, boom, baby. That just happened. We out.